People might go on a gluten-free diet for a number of reasons. Some do it for weight loss, others for a wheat allergy and gluten intolerance, gluten sensitivity, but also others who are suffering from just strange ailments tend to try gluten-free diets in a last resort kind of hope. And gluten is actually one of the top environmental factors involved in food sensitivities. So it's not a bad idea if you want to try to cut gluten out of your diet to see if it makes any improvement in your symptoms. I personally went gluten-free due to a celiac diagnosis, which is a gluten intolerance. And I'll be getting into what exactly that disease consists of, as well as what gluten is. And then I'll touch on the problems it was causing in my body and in my life. And then I want to end on a positive note with with a few silver linings. So make sure you stick around for those. So I'm Carly, for anybody who hasn't seen my videos. I'm a plant-based nutritionist, and I've been gluten-free for approximately 10 years and vegan or plant-based for the past 5. I hope you find this video helpful, because going gluten-free literally changed my life. And not only because it removed all of the symptoms I was experiencing. So basically, gluten is the protein found in wheat, rye, and barley, and any of their constituents like semolina or kamut, things of that nature. And it is the trigger for celiac disease, which is a gluten sensitivity. So when I ingest gluten, it triggers an autoimmune response in my small intestine, which in turn releases this cascade of inflammation, which flattens the villi in my small intestine. And if you're not familiar, those increase the surface area for nutrient absorption. So when you flatten those and cause a lot of erosion in the small intestine, you will begin suffering from some severe nutrient deficiencies, which is why celiac can manifest in so many different ways. And one celiac is never going to have the same symptoms as another. In fact, the majority of them are asymptomatic. Some problems it was causing in my body were things like migraines, fatigue, trouble concentrating, and brain fog, anxiety, depression, eczema. But strangely, I would get these bright red areas of my extremities, like the tops of my ears or my fingers, or sometimes my whole hand or both hands, and they would turn bright red and inflame, and ultimately my hands would start cracking and bleeding all the time when they would get really severe, like at the peak of my illness. That hasn't happened in a long time, but once in a great while, I'll notice that the tips of my fingers start to get really hot and swollen, which is likely due to some sort of cross-contamination in my kitchen with gluten. But it's inevitable. I've just come to live with it. What was equally challenging were the problems that this gluten intolerance was causing in my personal life. So my relationships started to struggle, my friends and family. They didn't know how to respond to me with how distressed I was and all these strange symptoms I was experiencing when I've always been a very healthy individual. It didn't make sense what I was going through. It didn't make sense that my body was falling apart so badly. My grades started to plummet. My finances started to crumble. I started missing rent and car payments, and that was very uncharacteristic for my past. I began missing exams, and I was incredibly studious, so that was all sorts of red flags started to go off when different areas of my life were all suffering for the same reason. It took approximately 2 to 3 years to get properly diagnosed, when on average it takes 8 to 10 years. So I am pretty fortunate that I stumbled across the doctor I did that put 2 and 2 together and realized that my inflammation was likely due to a gluten ingestion and an underlying celiac condition. It took about 5 years to start to recover on a gluten-free diet, which seemed like an eternity when you're so diligent about removing something from your diet and you're not seeing any results in your outward or inward experience. So a few silver linings that I experienced from this unfortunate situation were a new appreciation for nutrition and health. I began scouring the research for anything that might help my situation. And through it, I obviously developed this passion for discussing plant-based nutrition with others and helping them transition to this diet. And anybody who's also suffering from a gluten sensitivity or intolerance, I try to do my best to fulfill any of their needs or questions they may have about their situation. Also, from suffering from this disease, I was forced to make other lifestyle alterations, including transitioning to a plant-based diet. And I was able to come out of this healthier than I've ever been because of the decision to remove animal products and processed foods out of my diet completely. I sleep better, I exercise better, I have a healthier relationship with my food and my body. I lost all the excess weight overnight practically and haven't had an issue maintaining lean body mass since. And that's an amazing feeling. I'm also able to think more clearly like I used to. After being so diligent with a gluten-free diet for the past 10 years, I have also been plant-based for the past 5. So in that time, I was finally able to conceive my daughter, and that is pretty incredible considering that celiac disease can cause infertility, and it took me not only removing the gluten for many years, but replenishing my body with the proper nutrition in order to be able to have children and breastfeed. So I'm pretty proud of that. So I'd love to hear how a gluten-free diet has changed your situation and your experience. Or if you have other questions for me, let me know in the comments. If you enjoyed this video or found any of the information helpful, please give it a thumbs up. And I wish you the best of luck if you're going through a similar experience.